Hey there, the stranger. Before I answer your question of when I think YouTube began to change into what it is now, I want to first say that I still think YouTube's great, but it's definitely different because if I was me then now in a hypothetical situation, I would have never started to make anything on this site or done anything other than watch videos on this site. And to see why, I guess, why that is, I'll just tell you how I came to this site. I guess I first discovered YouTube just by, I guess how a lot of people did, by typing in Lazy Sunday. But other than look around for some wrestling matches on the site back then or something like that, I never went back on it again. But my neighbor, Fat Pug, who's on the site as well, who's been on the site way before me, he's always liked to dick around and make movies. So I've always been in his movies, I guess. But one day I went over to his house, and him and his buddy Sammy, who's a good guy, were making movies, and they had just put them on YouTube, and I was like, what is YouTube? You know, I mean, I'd heard of it, but I mean, like, why did you suddenly put it on here? Out of all the places, he had tried to get certain things sent into E-Bombs World or something like that, but you know, E-Bombs World decides, well, not now, because they ripped off YouTube, decided what showed up on the website, I guess, but he's like, I saw all these videos on here, and I thought, you know, these videos, some of these are horrible, they're just made by random people. We could do that, and that's how it all started. It was just like realizing that that's a person behind the camera, and you could do that too, whether it be crappy or good. Realizing that you could do that too, and just, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I hated the vloggers at first. I hated them, it was boring, and I tried to like some of them. I tried to like Geriatric, but you know, I was in high school, I wanted to be entertained, but I still think there's such a huge worth to legitimate entertainment that you put your heart and soul into, and I want to see that kind of entertainment from individuals. You know, I don't want to see it from the same places I've always been seeing it, or I wouldn't go to YouTube, I'd turn on the TV. And I started getting into some of the vloggers, but they had to catch my attention first, probably with other things. But I can kind of, it's almost like getting to the point now, I'm like, where have all the vloggers gone? It's almost refreshing to see some guy just sitting down talking about his grocery list now, because that never happens anymore. But maybe that's just overexposure to really good video shorts making. It's like these big companies have tried to ape what YouTube videos were all about, to the extent that we're starting to see different cliches, but sort of along the same vein as sitcom cliches. You know, it's like all these YouTube video cliches. It has to have a quirky ending, or it has to not make any sense, or it has to have an object that mouth doesn't move but voice is coming out of it that normally wouldn't. Like maybe you're talking to a bowling pin and it's funny for no reason. All this sort of trying to be William Street-esque humor, and you know, I'm just almost thinking like that isn't the beginning of when YouTube started to change, but I think a lot of it was the first time I realized it was like I would be way too intimidated and not have it even pop in my head that I could put a video on the site, was when they started not just every now and then that big video right beside the featured videos, and it was always some thing. I mean, I remember before YouTube had any real legitimate like partners, not as in the sense that it is now, but actual companies that put videos on YouTube. And one of the first people was NBC, and I remember thinking it was really cool, because I'm a pro wrestling fan, that TNA Wrestling was had joined the site, and I remember it was funny because it was featured on the front page, and YouTube crashed because so many people came on it. But back then, that was only like 1 million people at once. Now it would never. And I remember YouTube shutting down for a couple days, every now and then saying, we're closed for maintenance. They never do that now. They just do the half-assed, you can't comment, can't favorite, have 5-star, It's not like a website anymore. That's the whole problem. YouTube's trying to become like a network. They're trying to get rid of internet culture, and some people think it's positive, things they're doing. They get rid of spamming, they get rid of the hate messages, they get rid of the uploading of pirated content. But if you take away that, you take away the idea that it had to come from the internet, which is real people. You get upset when somebody sits there and trolls you and leaves like, you suck, I hate you, you fail at life, whatever, comments on your videos over and over or on your channel. But, it's still better than no comments at all. But if you take that away, you take away from the mentality of the web. It's like, don't enter this domain if you're not ready to get into it. I hate the idea that somebody gets banned for spamming. It's like, if you can't handle an annoying prick on the internet, then don't take them away. It's almost like that just scares you away from saying anything bad. And it's almost like YouTube just hates the web culture that gave birth to it, because those guys that are sitting there typing the little troll messages, not the spammers of like, the porn sites and the cams.com or whatever it is. Those guys are sitting there like, this video sucks, you suck, you suck, you suck, coming back to channels over and over and over again, were the guys that were on YouTube in the beginning. Those guys are web culture. And it's like YouTube doesn't want to admit that that's what gave birth to it. It wants to think it's better than that. When, it's just so funny. It's like, even like recently, Chris Crocker was like the biggest thing on the internet in like the last year. I know a lot of people don't like him. You don't really like him. You think his appeal's like a freak show. And, I think he's kind of funny. But that is that appeal. But still, that's that web culture. People go look for it, and they want to see that. That is the good and the bad of the internet. And YouTube doesn't want to accept that. They never made any mention of Chris Crocker because they don't really like Chris Crocker. They never really made any mention of, like the dramatic prairie dog, because they don't really like that sort of thing. I mean, they like to think themselves above the usual 4chan nonsense, or above the usual like something awful nonsense. But it comes from that same sort of vein. The power that YouTube gave people was that they could make their own things like that. I never watched a TV show and immediately thought I could do that with a camera. I thought maybe I would want to do that someday in a dream, but I could look at some guys on a road trip on a website and they're goofing around and I'm like, oh, I could do that. Why won't they accept my video to the E-Bombs World front page? Or, I could never animate anything, it could never be on Newgrounds, but with YouTube, I could do whatever I wanted. And it was just there, and it wasn't blammed off, or it wasn't not even on the website. It's like this amazing power to be like, I can be dull, I can be boring, I can be exciting, as long as it makes me happy, I'm there. And it's like you can't be taken off. But now it seems like you can be taken off, and they don't need you at all. Like, if they had the people who made Superbad on the front page doing things and saying things, and it really feels like they don't need you, That's what it feels like.